It had been a terrifying day for SCP-343, also known to some as God. He'd been assailed with visions of terrors to come. Buildings collapsed and consumed with fire. Millions of corpses littering the streets. Rivers running red with blood. And above it all, the Crimson Khan, the monarch of madness. The Scarlet King, laughing at his creation. This wasn't just some random nightmare. God had faced the Scarlet King in combat billions of years ago, and back then, he'd managed to defeat him. But in the years since, the dreaded devourer of gods had only gotten stronger and amassed bigger and more dangerous armies. And most frightening of all, the savior who was thought to someday defeat the Scarlet King once and for all, SCP-999, the Tickle Monster, was nowhere to be seen in any of these visions. But someone else was. The lights of the terrible fires glinted off his beautiful bald head. The body of his costume glowed in radiant sunshine yellow. Red rubber gloves were pulled tight across his clenched fists. He stood before the Scarlet King, unbroken, undaunted, ready to fight for all of humanity. It was Saitama, the One-Punch Man himself. God knew about him. Of course he did. He was omniscient. It kind of came with the whole God thing. He was aware of Saitama's stupendous strength, but the Scarlet King, he was beyond strength. Could the caped Baldy really face off against the avatar of all evil and win? Truthfully, God didn't know, and it was rare for him not to know something. But like his own begotten son in the desert 2 millennia ago, God would need to test this man. And if he survived the test and came out stronger, perhaps he could be the only one to truly do what even God could not: kill the Scarlet King. Meanwhile, a few cities away, the Sarkists never knew what hit them. Saitama's mighty fist collided with yet another nightmarish flesh construction, reducing it to a fine pink mist in an instant. Suddenly, they were realizing that they had massively underestimated their opponent yet again. A hideous beast made of pure, glistening muscle, a monster that looked like it never skipped anything day, charged in after, ready to unleash a punch against the side of Saitama's head. It had been human once, but thanks to a fusion of dark Sarkic magics and a generous application of monster cells, its muscles and bone structure had been expanded to create incredible strength and durability. He was immune to bullets and could shatter concrete with a gentle squeeze. The punch collided with Saitama's face with a resounding clang, but the hero for fun didn't seem to be affected. His plain visage betrayed no pain, just mild annoyance. Dude, a sucker punch? Not cool. You gotta punch people head on, like this. Saitama demonstrated with a straightforward play punch against the muscle beast's chest, but the creature would not live to receive the benefit of that experience. Even Saitama's lightest punch completely atomized the unfortunate thing, spraying purple goo everywhere and leaving nothing recognizable in its place. But while Saitama had a clear advantage, the fight wasn't over. There was one more killer in the visceral assassin trio, a monster that had taken up the name Gutso. He was a spaghetti-esque tangle of tendril-like intestines, perfectly designed to entrap and strangle enemies. While Saitama was busy turning the muscle beast into foam, Gutso reached out with a barrage of grasping intercenticles and wrapped up the caped Baldy, who found the whole thing insanely gross. "Ew, you're getting gunk all over my costume," he said. "I just had this thing dry cleaned." Saitama had no time for this. He just grabbed one of the tentacles and threw the thing off of him, like one would swat away a fly. He threw Gutso up into the sky, flying so fast that the creature had no chance of fighting back. It left through the stratosphere at hypersonic speeds, flying through the cold vacuum of space and landing in the sun. Gutso was immediately vaporized by the sheer heat of Earth's life support star. The whole encounter with all three monsters had taken less than 5 minutes, despite each one taking months to create and cultivate. A local Sarkic cult, the Children of Ulcer, had been closely observing Saitama's ascendancy through the ranks of the SCP Foundation. Ever since the Foundation showdown with Saitama in Tokyo, things haven't been the same. He tore through some of the most powerful anomalies in what turned out to be the ultimate job interview. Now, every group of interest is scrambling to either dethrone or recruit the caped Baldy. Neither had been successful. The sarcically modified visceral assassins had just been another in a long line of miserable failures. Saitama was ready to go about the rest of his day. He'd heard about a new movie, and he wanted to catch it while it was still in theaters. It's never the same with streaming. But sadly, that was not to be, because as soon as the battle was over, God, posing like a yogi, appeared floating in front of Saitama, bathed in a golden glow. "Be not afraid," he said. I'm not afraid," Saitama replied. "Well, good," God said. "That saves me some time. I need your help, Saitama. I received a vision that the Scarlet King may soon be entering our universe." "Oh my god," Saitama said. "From Stephen King's Dark Tower series?" "No, Saitama, that's the Crimson King. They're entirely different figures." God explained the severity of the situation to Saitama, and Saitama protested that he'd already bought his tickets to see the movie, and he didn't intend to miss it, especially with how expensive movie tickets are these days. God was having none of it. He immediately beamed the entire movie into Saitama's head and put the equivalent amount of money back into Saitama's bank account, and with that, it was time for the trials to begin. Immediately, God teleported himself and Saitama to the middle of a giant stone battleground. A vast army of Jason and the Argonauts-style skeleton warriors were waiting, wielding swords and shields. God was floating over the whole arrangement, and Saitama did his best not to look up his toga. But if the task was just fighting a bunch of skeletons, then this was already going to be too easy. As if God ever made his challenges easy. Just ask Job. A tall glass of milk, filled to the brim, appeared in Saitama's hand. God's challenge was for Saitama to battle the entire skeleton army without spilling a drop of milk. "To defeat the Scarlet King, you need absolute focus, not just raw power," God said. "And once you're done, you can drink the milk. Calcium is good for your bones. That's why the skeleton army wishes to kill you and take it." And the battle began. The legions of skeletons all poured in at once, ready for violence. Saitama went Bruce Lee on these bony fools, punching and kicking with his spare limbs, while always keeping at least one eye on the glass of milk. Thankfully, all the squats that Saitama had done during his grueling training had given him an extremely strong center of gravity, and thus perfect balance, even as the bone hordes swung for him with their razor-edged swords. God watched on from above, impressed, as bones exploded all around the ancient arena. Not a single drop of the precious milk spilled, even at the most intense parts of the battle. Clearly, he had the level of focus needed, just as God had hoped. Once the army was gone, Saitama took a long swig of cool, refreshing milk, which would later give him digestive issues. It turned out he was mildly lactose intolerant. "Good work, my son," God said, "but we're not done yet. The craziest and most exciting challenges are still to come, so keep watching the video." "What?" "What? I didn't say anything." It was now time for the second of God's trials. A furious chase across the entirety of the planet Earth's oceans, without the bald man ever letting his feet slip beneath the surface. If Jesus could walk across water, then Saitama had to beat the Son of God's personal best time, and maybe destroy the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in the process. We'll see. "How do I know when it's time to stop running?" Saitama asked, a bit bored. "It'll be time when I say it's time." "That's not vague at all, but I guess since you're God, that's good enough for most people." Saitama crouched at the shore of the Pacific Ocean like an Olympic sprinter, poised to unleash his full speed on the deep blue waters of his homeworld. With a thunderclap in the sky above, the challenge had begun. Saitama blasted off from the beach, scorching the sand into arcing spirals of molten glass. His body zipped across the waves with the speed of a number of speedboats higher than anyone could care to count. His feet hit the surface of the water repeatedly like powerful pistons, keeping him on the move as he began circling the globe at lightning speed. He was as graceful as a skipped rock that never stopped skipping, which was to say a bit off-putting and concerning while at the same time looking goofy as ever. It was only natural that the rumbling reverberations of his footfalls would rouse the creatures of the deep into a frenzied tirade directed at the hero for fun. A horde of sharp-toothed beasts that would have fit right in among the Deep-Sea King's minions surfaced and tried biting at Saitama's bald head. At the speed he was traveling across such a wobbly surface as the ocean, Saitama felt he wouldn't be able to put the proper oomph into his punches, So he shoulder-checked each of the monsters away with tactically timed barges. As he tore through the foam and the monsters, he came upon the most frightening threat in all of the world's waters, the Great Pacific Gyre. This massive patch of swirling garbage and human wastefulness was known by many names, including the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and the Pacific Trash Vortex. Over the years, it had been growing in power and taking in more and more trash. The true strength of the gyre had never been measured, but it had never been defeated in all its years faffing about in the dang old sea. It had also never met Saitama. The superhero closed in and delivered a punch that could make a Sakuga fanatic weep tears of ecstasy. The ocean erupted into those cube shapes. You know the ones. As all the garbage in the trash vortex was punched into space. You're welcome, the environment, Saitama snarked. With another masterful loop, Saitama arrived at the shore of the Atlantic, where the trial arbitrarily came to an end by the absolute and immutable will of God. Now it was time for the third of God's trials for the legendary Caped Baldy. He had already shown that he'd mastered all the terrains and challenges of Earth, but the Scarlet King was not a being of Earth. What if he dragged him out to space for the fight, taking advantage of Saitama's need to breathe air with his human lungs? He would need to be ready for such an eventuality, because the Scarlet King fought dirtier than Jake Paul. On God's instruction, Saitama jumped directly to Mars for the next trial. He expected to just be there alone, but he was wrong. The planet was already infested with evil muskbots, Elon's robotic minions that Saitama would have to fight. Thankfully, several of the robots were actually just paid dancers in robot suits who had already died due to the lack of oxygen on Mars, but the rest were ready to battle. Saitama began fighting the rusty buckets of Tesla brand evil, all while having to hold his breath and adjust to Mars's lower gravity, which somewhat reduced the impact of all strikes. They were saying cringeworthy meme phrases, which we'll spare you the details of as they battled, and strangely also kept ranting about South African farmers. But that didn't make it any harder for Saitama to defeat them. However, just when it seemed like Saitama could punch them all to pieces, they Voltroned together into one giant robot with Elon Musk's face. Worse still, with all this time wasted, Saitama was starting to run out of oxygen. Could this trial be too much even for the amazing One Punch Man? But then a huge shape descended from the sky. It was a meteorite made from all the trash Saitama had punched out of the ocean and into space. It came down with tremendous force and crushed the Elon bot. It also wiped out some burgeoning life that was developing on Mars, leaving the planet entirely barren aside from Saitama, as it should be. Then God appeared again. "You've done well, my son," God said. "Honestly, my real son probably couldn't do most of the crazy stuff I've had you accomplish today. You are literally cooler than him. It's canon." Leave me out of your family drama," Saitama yawned. "Your next trial is to witness incomprehensible horrors and comprehend them without going completely Sodom and Gomorrah cuckoo. Sounds doable, right?" God mused, snapping his fingers. Before Saitama could respond, he was flung into a swirling maelstrom of horrible screaming faces and writhing tendrils of flesh. Unidentifiable arthropod species crawled around in every known direction, and some unknowable ones. Up was down and left was Tuesday. The heart of the madness was made of inverted volcanoes and raindrops that laughed like clowns. Saitama observed the utter baleful nonsense befalling all observable reality around him with a look of mild annoyance. Where was this even? He said, genuinely needing context. An upside-down crab with devil horns wearing a green dress swam through the gelatinous air until it was close enough to Saitama to pinch his exposed ears. But instead of doing so, it started to weep profusely and recite the alphabet backwards. "Are you done?" Saitama criticized the crab. It responded by transforming into a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich and then undergoing mitosis. And then, as incomprehensibly as they began, the horrors ended with little more than a vague, kind of feeling. "Wow, incredible," God applauded. "That straight up killed everyone else I'd done it to." "Yeah, so was that the most deadly trial then?" Saitama tried to reason. "Not even, bro," God chuckled before initiating that very thing. The ultimate trial was in the middle of a UFC octagon, where Saitama and the big GOD were ready to face off in a physical fight. A mere mortal against the strength of a literal universe-creating deity. God squared up, as did Saitama, and the two went at it. When God woke up in the heaven ICU later, Head aching for the first time in history, and Saitama standing at his bedside with flowers and a box of chocolates, he uttered only 2 words: "He's ready." Now check out Saitama joins the SCP Foundation, SCP-076 Abel is annoyed, or One Punch Man vs. Omni-Man. Who breaks first? You won't believe what Saitama does next. For more,